rise to speak on this bill and support the intent of this government to provide all who work so hard to keep our communities safe with all the support that they need to be effective firefighters. Keeping communities safe is a prime responsibility of any government, and I rise today in support of the vital collaborative efforts that is needed from so many across the state to ensure this responsibility is met. In the Narungga electorate, brigades of volunteers across all communities and districts assist with the provision of emergency services. To say CFS crews are vital is an understatement, Mr Speaker. We all remember the catastrophic Pinery Fire in November 2015, and I've talked about that twice already in this chamber today, Mr Speaker, but it was devastating as it was in the Malalar and Balaclava. It stretched everyone to the limit, killed 2 people and burned out 85,000 hectares, and from which the area is still recovering. I only drove through there recently, Mr Speaker, with a constituent, and the scars remain, and they're quite remarkable. The charred trees that remain along the side of the road must provide a daily reminder to those that lived through that experience of the ordeal that they endured, and even the litany of brand new houses that now populate the area must be a reminder of all the homes that were lost to that terrible fire. It was a dark day in the Adelaide Plains history, but excitingly there is currently plans afoot to erect a memorial at Grace Plains that commemorate that dark day, and I congratulate Mr Peter March and the group that are working towards erecting that memorial and look forward to seeing it in its full glory. Another serious bushfire in the Narungga electorate occurred in April in Stansbury, which also saw everyone swing into action again, with farmer water units and dozens of volunteer CFS from local brigades working to get ahead of the blaze, which is only 3 kilometres north of the town and running uncontrolled toward the St Vincent Highway. There is no way such bushfires could be controlled quickly without locals putting their own lives at risk and pitching in. If my memory serves me correctly, Mr Deputy Speaker, I believe that particular fire was the result of a burn-off that was lost control of, and they can be quite dangerous when that does happen. Another more recent fire, this time threatening the township of Maitland, occurred just a couple of weeks ago, and given my electorate office is in Maitland, we saw the action and the alert system that I will refer to later at work close up and personal, and I will, as I said, talk on that later. Mr Deputy Speaker, we had a harvester fire in Mundura on November 1 as well. In this case, the farmer parked his harvester because conditions were worsening, and it had been parked for 3 to 4 hours before it had caught alight. The farmer was in town at the shops and completely unaware until he arrived home. Fortunately, and again thanks to our CFS volunteers from Port Broughton, Mundura and Wards Hill, as well as 25 farm firefighting units, the fire was contained quickly before it did any damage. Sometimes, despite following all the rules and procedures, as this farmer did, accidents are unavoidable and will happen inevitably. And of course, recently an out-of-control fire was burning near Minlaton, which was caused by lightning during that frightening storm of a few weeks ago. Not much can be done to prevent that, but that fire alone required 100 CFS volunteers alongside water bombers and farm units, which minimised the damage to 400 hectares. We certainly have a lot to be thankful for in the Yorke Peninsula and Adelaide Plains for our local CFS groups. I'd like to acknowledge particularly Group Officers Matt McDonald, David Buzenshot, Andrew Cadd and Steve Cornwall, as well as every other volunteer and group officer around the electorate. We do have a tremendous group of volunteers in Narungga. He does a terrific job, David Buzenshot, and it is a difficult time for all of them. And as I said, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them wholeheartedly. Mr Deputy Speaker, I support this bill's intent being to ensure that all that is possible to do to prevent such fires occurring in the first place is done for the protection and well-being of all, including the CFS crews and farmer units that it takes to control such fires. I particularly support the establishment of a select committee, which I understand to be the direction in which this government is heading, which will specifically address questions from the farming industry and grain producers SA relating to the consideration of amendments to Section 82, subsection 2, which include new powers to allow a CFS officer or a superior to direct a person to refrain from carrying on any activity deemed to be presenting great risk to cause fire, to legally reduce the risk of a fire starting through inappropriate use of equipment or activities being undertaken. I welcome that call for the establishment of a select committee, and I'm particularly pleased that there is representation, or likely to be representation, on it by regional MPs. It is exceedingly important, I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, that this committee is populated with people who understand the challenges faced by farmers, because the contentious issue here is indeed harvesting. It's pleasing to hear the member for Giles imply that the member for Frome will also hopefully join that committee, and hopefully he himself joins that committee, to be a tremendous addition himself. We need a committee that has people that both understand things from the farmer's perspective and from the perspective of the CFS, and I'm certain that those members from this side of the chamber who populate that committee will have that insight. I look forward to making a submission to my learned colleagues and encouraging the plethora of constituents from the Runga who have contacted me on this issue to do so as well. The proposed amendments expand on current powers, which to my mind work quite well. Being a regional MP, I can vouch for the efficiencies of the current system, but, as in all things, improvements can always be made. Thus, I look forward to the findings of the Select Committee. The Pinery fire itself was not started by a harvester, but reportedly by a car battery left near a wire fence in a paddock on a property. The Middleton fire started from unavoidable lightning. The Stansbury fire, which started from a burn-off, which jumped the boundary. So there are instances of other fires started. But the recent fire near Maitland was started by a harvester. But it is noted, Mr Deputy Speaker, in this contribution that that was on a day which was not announced as a fire ban day, and so it is accepted that sometimes such events just happen despite best efforts. And the best efforts are vast. And I'll give you the example of a local SMS alerting system currently in place on the Yorke Peninsula, which is an initiative driven by local responsible farmers who are invested in each other and together protecting their operations. The example shows how local information is crucial, that broad-scale blanket bans can not only be inaccurate in ever-changing weather conditions, but can drive angst among grain growers, especially when there are millions of dollars of grain yet to be harvested, losing quality and thus price quickly with unforeseen delays. The text message system that notifies local users of current harvest fire danger index risk conditions is considered to work well across the Yorke Peninsula and is successful because it is trusted, specific data connected locally via automated weather stations across SA, of which there are 170. Such a system empowers local communities to make decisions relevant to them and allows for harvesting to occur to its fullest extent without delays that can be naturally frustrating if they are not absolutely necessary. I give the example of a council-wide ban that is called the night before, but cannot be easily adjusted and circulated when conditions change, either worsening or improving, and often lasts for 24 hours. As the Select Committee works toward improvements in the fire risk mechanisms, I highlight today the practices that are already working. I give the example that I've been referring to of the SMS system, which was developed by AgBite, which is used on the northern Yorke Peninsula by some 360 recipients. Estimations are that over 700 farming businesses and other community stakeholders utilise harvest FDI information generated by these AgBite weather stations. Such a localised system is popular because it is trusted, accurate, reliable, up-to-the-minute information, meaning there are fewer occurrences of farmers pushing the limit to reap as much as possible, fearing a blanket ban is coming. By using this system, there is confidence that should the advice be given to stop reaping, it is for a valid reason and is likely to be for a specific period, only as long as is absolutely necessary. The system I cite is coordinated by a trusted person, in this case David Buzenshot, to do what decision-making is crucial and often in association with CFS. In some regions, there are a rotating group of farmers that undertake this task for a year and then they rotate it because the responsibility is taken very seriously and can be quite stressful. Having the human factor in the SMS alerting chain is recognised as crucial to ensure data is up to date as opposed to automated systems that can fail in effectiveness, resulting in irrelevant or inaccurate or old information being distributed, leading to a lack of trust in the alert being provided and the advice not therefore being heeded. There are over 30 public weather stations in the AgBite network, but the majority are privately owned by grain growers. And at this point, Mr Deputy Speaker, I have to acknowledge Leighton Wilsh for the work he has done toward this initiative, which was recently acknowledged by winning the prestigious Prime Super Agricultural Innovation Award. The fire danger alerting system communicates through text messages to farmers so that they better understand fire risk during harvest and can make more informed decisions. I've made the Minister for Emergency Services aware of LEAT's work, and I know he has communicated with the Minister for Agriculture, and I'll certainly be encouraging him to make a submission to the Select Committee if it is so formed. The local relevant data from the 50 or so weather stations dotted within my electorate as part of the network of 170 specialised stations allows for farmers to maximise, safely, their harvesting hours, and with much of our grain industry working within 20 kilometres of the coast, conditions vary greatly to inland, so the local weather station network empowers users to make sound decisions about harvest risk. Thus, it is recognised that the majority of farmers operate responsibly and also comply with the harvesting code of practice that exists. And they are commended for it, Mr Deputy Speaker, absolutely commended. The best part, in my view, is that this is a self-regulated policy, which works exceedingly well for the most part. The view of these farmers is, particularly in areas that have diligently worked to install these text messaging systems, that they don't need to rely on government regulation or police intervention. They simply need to regulate themselves. And I think that's great that cross-sections of our farming community just get on with doing it themselves. And it is a win-win too, because farmers I know feel as though the full fire ban days are cumbersome, not agile enough, and deprive farmers of scarce, valuable harvesting time. With this text messaging system, farmers can be warned when the fire danger index is too high for harvesting, but also my understanding is they can be warned or told when the conditions are abating and that it is safe to resume harvesting. This can only be done with localised, personalised and accurate weather testing. Conditions on the coast may make it too windy to harvest, while conditions inland might be calmer and are fine. It really needs to be localised information that is provided. I hope the group that developed this initiative will present to the committee, as I said, when and if it is established, because my view is that this is the future of managing fire risk: agile, localised, instantaneous reporting of weather conditions. The farming community that I know is a close-knit one, who successfully collaborate with like-minded effort, who help each other and indeed regularly down tools to assist each other when required. All that said, we are all at the mercy of nature and accidents happen. It is understood that fires started by headers are often unlucky, a bearing failure, a header comb hitting a rock, and that reaping low-lying lentil crops can be particularly challenging, even on days that are not fire ban days. That was the case, I'm advised, on 19 November, just a couple of weeks ago, when the fire near Maitland started. It moved quickly and threatened the township, starting about 5 kilometres west of the town and with a northerly wind travelling south. I was not in the Maitland electorate office on that day, but my staff relayed to me what was happening: the black sky of billowing smoke out their window, the regular alert text message advice they were receiving, the ABC broadcasting regular advice, and the automated landline message they received, albeit with a robotic voice mispronouncing the word Maitland, but they got the gist of what it was trying to say. Watching the online emergency services scanning system too, they found it comforting, which alerted them when and what crews and brigades were being sent from where to the incident, which included, in this case, the 5 water bombers which were being dispatched. They found the system worked well overall, which is commendable to all, and the fire was contained without loss of property, but burnt out 50 hectares of grass, cropland and scrub. And with the electorate office being opposite the bakery, my staff could also tell when the crisis was over before even the system advised it. For as soon as the firefighting was no longer required, the multitude of farmer units that had helped out put the fire out, driven by farmers who had got off their own headers and down tools for the race to assist their fellow farmer in trouble, as is always the case in these instances, all started pulling up to the bakery and piling out of their utes and trucks to get a pie and a drink before going back to work. With 100 firefighters called in and 33 firefighting appliances, I can assure this place that the bakery did a roaring trade. Such incidents remind us of the vast number of services and people that it takes to keep our community safe, and the many people that are impacted by such incidents. Thus, it is crucial that such systems are effective. They also reiterate the camaraderie and support systems that are in place in our rural communities, Mr Speaker, and who value the help of each other in any time of need, and the absolute crucial and willing work undertaken by CFS members, many of whom are farmers themselves. Thus, in speaking to this Fire and Emergency Services Miscellaneous Amendment Bill 2018, I will watch with interest its passage and await recommendations that come from the Select Committee if it is formed. I will also be encouraging submissions to the committee for consideration from Narungga constituents and stakeholders, who I recognise have specific, valuable knowledge and experience to bring to this topic at hand. I commend the formation of the Select Committee to the House, Mr Speaker, and eagerly anticipate its findings.
Member for West Torrens.
The member from Narungga makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense, sir. He says all the time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the opposition has not been briefed on this bill by the minister. Indeed, the opposition was informed by the minister's office that this bill will not be debated this week. So something has occurred, sir, and I will attempt to inform the House what I think has happened. Mr. Speaker, we all know what occurred last week when 4 brave and I think patriotic, honourable members put their community before their party. Pretty tough stuff to do. Pretty tough stuff to do, sir. But they did it. And that, I think, had a number of impacts. One, obviously, the voice of farming communities in South Australia all of a sudden got a lot stronger, very quickly. Kudos to those 4 brave who stood up for farming communities. And I bet you a lot of other regional members who didn't do that are thinking to themselves, why didn't I as well? Mr. Speaker, what occurred then was obviously the government's legislative agenda was put into disarray. This bill was introduced quickly. I have been informed by some members, and I don't know the veracity